Tori Anderson,
Present.
and Scott Bartle is also here. Mr. Jim Reeves is going to lead us in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Call to the public. We have a few folks interested in speaking to the public or speaking to the board. And as a reminder, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less and keep them professional in nature. We're going to start with Mr. Leon Potter.
First of all, regarding the override, the committee committee this past week, I made the last two. I think there was a lot of good ideas put out there and a lot of brainstorming. And one of the concerns that I had bringing in was how the public would react to override being on the ballot again. Because we know it's failed the last 4 times it's been on the ballot, and each time decidedly more and more so. But as we come to find out more about proposals, possible proposals regarding different terms of the override timeline, the superintendent had mentioned a shorter term time frame was possible for the last public meeting, and discussed some of that. I think that one of the committee's recommendations was a 2-year, 5% recommendation. And I think that has the best chance of passing. And the reason for that is because it is a 2-year and out. There's a definite timeline. And as long as the board can have it approved or written to the pamphlet where it's specific to pay increases for teachers, for staff, not saying that other staff admin aren't important, but as far as the voter sentiment out there, anything directed for that administration is going to be picked apart and won't have a chance at it. It's hard to say that everyone's important, that's the role of the board. But I think the public wants to gear more reward for the teachers in the classroom to be right there with our children. And as you know, I have children in the school too, so I know how important that is. A couple of the recommendations by the superintendent were longer term, a 3-year full funding and phase out over the next 2 years, and long periods, which more funding specific for administration. Like I said, I don't think those would pass, quite honestly, and I'm not sure I can support it. As much as I want to, and as much as I think a longer term would give more stability to the district with funding, I think at this point in time, the district needs to have a good communication, a good reach out to the public, and the superintendent with his leadership, with the deputy superintendent, I think that can be done, and winning over taxpayers, district stakeholders, slowly in baby steps. I at first heard this, I didn't think it would pass, but this last week, I've changed my mind, thinking I could support what the community supports, and then 2-year, 5% override. So I thank you again for your time, and once again, happy anniversary.
Thank you, Mr. Potter. Mr. Reeves.
Mr. President,
President, members of the board. Jim Reeves at 433 West Venture Road in Maricopa. I'm speaking in favor of you approving an override bond movement tonight. There's several reasons that I'd like to share with you in reflection of why I would strongly recommend that. Number one, I've been on every previous override that's happened here in the last 5 years. And I can say safely, because of your new administration, your new superintendent, we have gained more in a shorter period of time of reaching into the community and educating ourselves and coming with a good conclusion than we've ever done before in an override. So I'm very impressed with the new superintendent. I thank Dr. Chestnut for leading us in that, and it's been a remarkable step forward for us. Secondly, there's always the concern, there's been a recent decline in the community of saying no to the override. And again, you might hear the voice out there that comes through that says, how many times do I have to tell you no? And to those I respectfully would like to submit, every time I hear the cries of children. The children are the focus of what we're doing on. It's also interesting in what Dr. Chestnut has taken us through this last couple of weeks, and those of us who've met with him, there have been people who've come to our meetings that voted no that are now voting yes. And it's because they've taken the time to educate themselves. All of us care about the community. None of us want to be frivolous with funds. But those things that saying we have too many administrators, not true. Look at the facts. Those of us who say Kyrene is better, last year they rated lower than Maricopa School District. Those of us that say we only do overrides to maintain, not true. They may be under the nomenclature of a maintenance contract, but this school has never been about maintaining. We continue to excel. It also is not something we have to wait for a problem to develop before we take care of it. This year we replaced 1/3 of our teaching staff. I don't know of any business that can replace 1/3 of their staff, particularly if they had as many staff as the school district has, and still be up and running efficiently at the start of school, which they will do. We have a problem. We have to address it. I'd like to see it longer. I'd like to see it more. I think there's a way of good faith of stepping to the community and saying, look, we'll go for a shorter time. We'll target where the funds are going, and we'll prove to you that we're prudent and we will nail it. And I think also because of the new superintendent, we need to support him, our deputy superintendent, the school board, and especially all of our staff and teachers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Clint Augustine. And folks, if you would please state your name and address for the record as well.
All right, Clint Augustine, 37168 West Leonessa Avenue, Maricopa, Arizona. I would like to say first off that I could not have imagined a more impressive process when I first got up and said, please consider moving forward with an override. Just with the leadership of Dr. Chestnut and the administration and just the group that got together. So many times when things like that happen, you wonder if your voice is being heard. And I really felt, win, lose, or draw, that we had some disagreements, but everyone's voice was heard. And I just want to say that is just the most spectacular hope that I have for our district, that if we can do that in such a short period of time, and as Jim said, it was amazing how much work got done in such a short period of time. Clearly, I see the benefit of a smaller, the 5%, that seems to be the theme. I like the 2-year option simply because it gives us a lot of flexibility. It gives us that short term, get it done, 2 years to prove that we can do better, and then come back and really just show the community we need more money, because this 5% is a drop in the bucket compared to what we really could use to make our schools great. I would like to see the board find a way, and I know that I've looked over and over and over again. I wish that I could say, look, there's a magic bullet somewhere that will increase teacher salaries and you don't have to include it in this override. My biggest fear is that the minute you include any kind of salary increases in the override, it's going to turn people off. I realize it's a very small amount and a $1.3 million chunk of money, but I also think it's important enough for us to find a way to be able to pay our teachers what other teachers in our area are getting paid, whether or not we're able to pass an override. And so I would love to see you do something tonight that doesn't include salary increases on the override, but commits to increasing the salaries of all of the staff, that's teachers and classified, within the next school year. I believe that there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of new construction. I believe there's going to be some additional funding coming our way. If there's an extra 100 kids, that's probably enough to fund it, and you wouldn't need necessarily teachers for 100 kids because it's on all the different grade levels and all the different areas. That would be my hope. Whatever you do, please put something. I would like to be able to vote yes. I was one of the no votes last time, and yet I was the one who got out here and said, look, if you give the right proposal, I'll vote yes. And I would like the opportunity to vote yes. I think it might have been Jim Reeves that said in one of our committee meetings, we're just going to tell the community we're not giving up on our kids. And I thought that was one of the most important statements that was made that whole time. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Hornbacher, followed by Karen Honeycutt.
Hi there, good evening. Lisa Hornbacher, 19987 North Santa Cruz Drive in Maricopa. I'm here actually tonight kind of impromptu. I was over at my son's orientation at Desert Wind Middle School when I was told with a bunch of other parents that there will no longer be busing from our particular area in the villages to Desert Winds, that we either have to drive our children and pick them up or we have to send them to the alternate school, which would be Maricopa Wells. I did a lot of research before we sent my son to Desert Wind, and I felt more comfortable with that situation, and now I'm concerned, and I did watch a bunch of other parents walk out of there as well, that now I'm going to have to look at other options where perhaps we might have to look at Kyrene or virtual learning, which I haven't even looked into that yet. So I would really like if the board would consider readdressing the busing issue and possibly offering to parents the opportunity to pay for busing, because I would certainly be willing to do that. And I know that there were other parents there who also stated they would be willing to do that. So it's really what I just wanted to say. Like I said, I was just there and they said, hurry up, run over to the board meeting. So that's what I did. So thank you so much.
We're glad you did. Thank you very much for your feedback. Karen Honeycutt, followed by Diane Street Speck.
Good evening, President Bartle, governing board members, Dr. Chestnut. My name is Karen Honeycutt. I live in 1101 East Brenda Drive in Cass Grant. I'm the Director of Finance for Maricopa Unified School District, and I would like to speak in support of an override. I've seen firsthand how reductions in funds have hurt this district. I've seen this district grow from a very small district to a district that had very rapid growth. I've also seen the decline in student enrollment and also in financial support. This has put a hardship on the students, and it's put a hardship on the staff. I understand the hesitation of the board to fund an override that they feel they may not get a return on. Unfortunately, the expense of an override is not one that can be avoided. Although the district has had some unique assistance, such as the auction grant, those funds are not now available. The override funds are not now available that we had in the past. We've seen no significant increases in state aid at this point. The proposal that is to be suggested is minimal. I believe it will give the community a chance to see that the district is cautious and perhaps give the economy a little time to recover. And I believe that the future will best be served with support of education, both financially and in a standard of society. The support of the Native American community in Maricopa has been phenomenal. And I now hope that the governing board and the community will also demonstrate that support as they've done in the past and move forward with an override. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Street Speck, followed by Nancy Smith.
Good evening, President Bartle, Dr. Chestnut, members of the board. My name is Diane Streetsbeck, and I have been in education for almost 30 years. This is my second year within the district. So I come to you not only as an educator, but as a parent, although my kids are all post-high school, and also as a community member. I love the idea of having something very short, very concrete. I don't believe, if you don't be really concrete, the public right now, from what I can tell, from what I've heard, and from all three lenses, is there hasn't been a lot of trust with the school district in the past. So I think if you do something short and they know specifically and can see what you're using the funds for, such as technology, I think you could get buy-in. And it disheartens me to say that, although I love the idea that you would put money toward funds, I think you need to get the trust of the community first and then proceed from there. But I agree with it, with what other people have said, and they obviously said it more eloquently. But, so I support the override.
Thank you very much. Nancy Smith, followed by Leanne Clark.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Chestnut. Thank you for letting me come and speak. My name is Nancy Smith. I live at 21911 North Lakeside Drive in Maricopa. I too am here to talk about the override. And I will confess, I was a no vote during the last override. Basically for two reasons. I am definitely a supporter of lower taxes across all government. So whenever there's an opportunity to lower taxes, I'm all for it, and I usually try to push for it in terms of things that I vote for as well. But the second reason is that I lost trust in the school district leadership, and the fact that, did I believe that they had a specific plan to actually improve the performance in the school with the previous override? And the answer that kept coming back to me because of the communication or lack of communication was no. I wasn't buying into the fact that there was a specific plan, and so I lost trust in that leadership. I think over the years there's been a perception that the school district is not performing at an excellent level. And I use the word perception because I know that in many cases there are views of excellence all around us, and we just don't know it. So I think communication is a big problem. But I also think, and based on some things I've learned recently, there are definitely areas that we have needs in that could push us to another level of performing. Some of those things that I found recently is that we are losing high-performing teachers because our average salary is less than the average salary of schools in the East Valley. That really bothers me. I work for a big organization in the Valley, and losing high-performing people is not a good thing, and it makes me sad that our children are missing out on those high-performing teachers because of that. So that's a huge concern for me. I also understand that our technology in our schools is not at a level in which we might compare it to some of the East Valley schools as well, and that's very concerning because we all know that technology is the wave of the future, is current, and we have to send our students out into the world as adults with a high technology level of understanding and how to perform with that technology. So I have a huge concern there too. And then the third thing that was of meaning to me in some of the things that I've gathered is that our classroom sizes are significantly higher than those of East Valley schools as well. And so that means that kids don't get the amount of time with the teacher one-on-one that they would if the class sizes were lower. So all three of those things are things that lead me to say, all right, we need something here in Maricopa and we need a boost. And so we have new leadership, and I'm running out of time, and I have so much to say. We have new leadership, and I think with a boost of an override, I could support. I love the short-term 5% idea, and I think that we could benefit from a boost to Maricopa school system, and so I encourage you to consider that, to get it on the ballot, and I encourage everyone who is a no vote to do some research along with me, learn some facts, and find out how we can improve our community. Can I say one last thing? Our community needs a good performing school system. The reason I say that is because it's a big picture. Businesses come to communities based on population Population comes because you have an excellent school system and some other things. And then you know what follows? Economic development. And look at all the things we want. And economic development comes because people are coming where the people are. It's a big picture, and so I encourage anyone who said no to consider the facts and see what kind of a boost they would give to the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Leanna Clark, followed by Jeanette Braden.
My name is Leanne Clark. Thank you for letting me come and speak to you. I live at 42942 Whimsical Drive in Maricopa, in Province. And I was called the other night. My friend said that she was having this committee, and that Province is noted for voting no on this issue. And why is that? So I called some of the people in Province to find out. I found that there were probably 2 or 3 different scenarios on that. One is the people that are well educated and know what's going on in the school district who have been disappointed in what has happened. And then there are those who say, I don't want to pay taxes no matter what it's for. I just won't approve any increase in my tax bill. And I voted no for it, and probably for the last reason. I don't want to pay any more money either. But I came to give my opinion. And as I sat there and listened to the people talk, I was touched by their passion for the school district, for what's going on here. And you know, I would like to see the Maricopa schools be the best in the state. I would like to have people coming here because of the schools, not sending them somewhere else because of the schools. I feel it can be done. I think we have to have the vision. I think we have to be challenged. I think we have to hurt a little bit in our pocketbooks. And I think if we present it right, and we do it right, and we market it right, it can be done. I must say that I started out believing we should do it smaller, 5% for 2 years. That sounded good. But then I got to thinking about it. In 2 years, we're going to come back and ask for it again. I think we should make it longer. I think people are going to be turned off in 2 years by asking for it again. Unless we can make it so well known that we have done so well that they'll be willing to vote for it again. I would promote the fact that we need it for a longer term where we can have more money to accomplish what we want to accomplish. I thank you for the time that you've given me. I know it can be done. Have the vision. Let's go for it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. Jeanette Braden.
Good evening, Dr. Chestnut, President Bartle, and members of the board. My name is Jeanette Braden. I live in 44765 West Horse Mesa Road, Maricopa. And like everybody else, I'm here to support the override proposal. I believe that this time it's different. I believe that part of the reason that it wasn't passed before was there was a large misconception from the public. They didn't see the need for the override. All they heard was tax rate going up, and they kept calling it's a tax, raise. And nobody wants to raise taxes, especially with the economic times. But I believe if we can word it right, we are specific at what we're going to target, and it's a short-term, small percentage. I think that people can see a result. They can see a short-term result to their investment, and the next time that we propose an override, it will be a seed, and they will see that it will work. I also think that our district, our teachers, you guys as administrators, have done so well And I don't know how you do it. I'm very involved at MES, that's where my son attends, and I just don't see how these teachers are able to do their job with the limited resources that they have. We really need this, and I think that with the right people, and we have the right people involved, there's a lot of passion behind it, and there's willingness to go and tell the community, this is exactly what we're going to do. I think that's part of the problem too, that there was not a real clear vision of what the override was intended to do, and I think this time it could be different. Everybody wants their child to do well in school. We have a large population of kids that still attend our schools, and every parent, even if they don't support the override, they support higher or excellent education, and this is what the override is for. So I kind of don't see, I don't agree with the 5-year term, because it is a longer term. I think the smaller time frame will be better in terms of showing the public this is what we're going to do and we're going to be able to do it. But I will agree, if it passes, I will vote for it. So if you could just reconsider and go forward, I think this will be great for the district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board? Seeing no one, we will,
Oh, wait, there's a couple more.
please,
Is this only for the override, or can we talk about
anything.
Anything?
It's your time. Well, 3 minutes anyway, but. Please state your name and address for the record if you would.
My name is Ken Bergen, 43341 West Palmer Drive over here in the Villages. I'm coming directly from Desert Wind Middle School, where we had the 7th grade orientation type thing today. Today is when I found out that the buses are no longer running into the Villages over to Desert Wind. Today, school starts Monday. Why? Why are we just finding out today that the buses aren't going? I mean, if anybody can answer that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. If you would give your information to Dr. Chestnut, we will get back to you and follow up with you as well as the other students and parents on that issue. We don't have the ability to address the issue at this point in the meeting.
During call to the public, but Dr. Chestnut can certainly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please.
Hello, my name is Marcus Schmitz. I'm at 18856 North Common Trail. Want to bring to your attention that this is currently not being televised. I'm not sure, because normally these meetings are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That was just that home. It's not on TV.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
This is concerning the override. I know how much the school district needs the override. I know it's hugely important. But given my unique circumstance of being a volunteer and also being, paying attention to the boards and what have you, that the override has some major obstacles it needs to overcome in order for any amount to be passed. No. Please forgive my bluntness, but MUSD 20 does not have the best of reputations out there. When I talk to other teachers of the district, when they come to my enterprise, I let them know that I volunteer over here just bringing in. A lot of times I get, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, ouch. So, and listening to the boards and hearing that the subdivision Providence, is that the right one? Almost everybody in there does not want the override. I don't think they're aware of the fact that if the override did pass and improvements could be made in the schools, that it could actually potentially up their property values. So I think if we spend more time trying to educate the public rather than hide information from them, maybe explain things to them that people might be a little bit more agreeable to actually passing their override. Now they're going to see this as, an additional tax, not something that's being extended or renewed or what have you. So no matter what dollar amount you put on it, they're just going to, vote it down for the sake of voting it down, because a lot of people are strapped for cash. And if we had the ability to educate them, maybe explain why MUSD 20 has created some of the positions that have been controversial in nature, that it would have a better chance of actually getting it passed. So the only thing I'm really here to do is ask you to educate the public, get them to understand how necessary this is, because being a volunteer, I see that there is such an amazing lack of renewable resources that is very necessary to the curriculum in the majority of these classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your feedback and for your volunteering. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Nathan Conrad, 19349 North Miller Way, Maricopa. Having been an educator in this district for several years and living here for just a little while longer, I do see the need for the override, but for a short-term lower value, because I believe that's where we're going to succeed, because given that opportunity, the educators can, and that just small amount of excess help, the educators in this district can show you great change and great impact for even that small amount, and you'll have a better chance of succeeding with larger things in the future. So I am in support of an override, but as a smaller override at the beginning, simply because I don't believe that if you go big right now, it's going to be successful. And we need to see some successes in order to generate the support in the community that we need in order to prove that we can do exactly what we say we do. So specific guidelines for that money when it's going into the ballot, and excellent marketing and getting community support behind it. And the way to do that is by word of mouth. Use Twitter, whatever it is that people enjoy looking up. Make a Facebook page for the override, for heaven's sake. Do whatever it is you need to do to spread that word. But we need to get that small amount of extra help and prove that that extra help gets you the benefits. We've seen that we're gathering data, and that data will show whether that money is worth it or not. And if it's not, don't ask for it again. But I bet you we can do it. And that's all I really have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Manuel?
Member of School Board, my name is Louis Manuel, Chairman of the Committee, 695 West Beale Avenue. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I wanted to see what the public would come up and present themselves. And if there's anybody that has been decisive to not go with the override statute in the community, we have been faced with a lot of issues, concerns with our kids and whatnot, but that's also the reason why we've always supported it. You go back and look at your numbers, the community has always supported the override, and which is kind of underlying issue, because the school system is one of the things that we feel strong about, and we'll continue to do that. Because the kids, our initial investment with the kids, our initial growth is going to be how they produce and how they progress throughout their lives and into the economy that's growing and the lifestyle that they're getting into, and the city of Maricopa and the community. For those that I keep the meeting, the first one, and one thing that we had was transparency. I want to make sure that a lot of those things were transparent, because once you invest in something, you want to make sure that you have full participation. And one of those things is knowing exactly what the money is being used for. We address those things. We look some light. Within the last 2 years, finally being able to communicate with the school system on our children, which brought out a big concern on what we need to take initiative on our own, the accountability and responsibility that we have. We will continue to support the school system. We will continue to do what we have to do to drive our kids to a higher education and the city of Maricopa and Maricopa Unified School District. And we'll continue to support that. However, we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here for forever. And we're going to see that what that happens in the city of Maricopa, Maricopa Unified School District, we're going to support. We support the override, and any of those things that move forward, we'll support. Anything that move forward within the school district, we're going to move forward and support. The big participation is trying to get that. And I agree with the outreach. And the other thing was the outreach. That has to be one of the mainstays. Involving the committees, involving the people. They got to know. They got to have their buy-in on what they're putting in. Yes, the amount seems small when you break it down over the year, but that's a big chunk of money. But we know that. And we know that. We're the first ones to know that. But we're the first ones to jump in there too and participate when we can. So, with that being said, the Alchini community and supporting the people that I agree with the whole thing. And I just wanted to know participation of the residents here and see what that came about. That's where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Would like to thank Chairman Manuel for being here. We also have two other elected officials, Councilman Leon Potter, who we heard from earlier, as well as Tribal Council Member Delia Carlisle. Thank you for being here. Item 3, discussion and possible approval of personnel schedule, which includes resignations, reclassifications, terminations, non-renewals, stipends, new position requests, employment ratifications, leave of absence, FMLA requests, and other administrative actions. Mr. Beckett.
Thank you. President Bartle, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Chestnut, you have in front of you tonight the personnel schedule. I'll entertain any questions.
I have no questions.
Move approval.
Do you have questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. I just have a quick question, Mr. Beckett. Who will the football coach report to?
President Bartle, the football coach will actually be reporting, I believe, to Dr. Chestnut directly, since the line supervisor for the district athletic director. So both those positions. I think Mrs. Salai may have some say, but again, it'll be Dr. Chestnut's call.
Okay, thanks. There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider, discuss, amend if desired, and deemed advisable to adopt a resolution ordering a call of a special budget override election to be held in and for the district and declaring the deadline for submitting arguments for and against the election to the Pinal County School Superintendent as August 17, 2012 at 5 p.m. Dr. Chestnut.
Thank you, President Barlow. Get my microphone on. Thank you, President Barlow. As you know, the topic of the evening is an override, and as several people in the audience have mentioned, we have spent a fair amount of time the last couple of weeks talking about that. I pulled together a group of parents, community members, staff members, and they served as an advisory committee to me. I told them, hey, I'm new to the school district, and we have a big decision to make, and I need your input concerning what recommendation I should make to the governing board. And so we spent 3 different evenings together, and we had about 30 different people involved, and we had some good discussions. Went over some of the facts and figures and some of the options that we have. And so I have a PowerPoint here that I'd like to show you that really kind of summarizes what we've been talking about as a group of 30 for the last couple of weeks in those 3 meetings. So I always like to start with a picture of graduates, just to remind us that that is really the ultimate goal of what we're in school business for, and that's to help our kids graduate with high school diplomas, career and college ready to be lifelong learners so they can move on to the next phase of their life and be successful. And that's the reason why we want to have an override, so we can do a better job of doing that. Why do we need an override? Number one, the MUSD staff wants to provide the best education possible to our students. An override will provide additional resources to assist in meeting that goal. You heard some of the passion in the room tonight, and I certainly have not met every staff member yet, but I have been really impressed with principals, the teachers, classified staff that I have met. And it's been pretty universal that they have said, you know, we want to do a better job. We want to continue to improve. We know that we could do better with more resources for our students. And they're very clearly focused on improvement and doing a good job with the students. There's a great tradition here that I think we can continue to build on. Number two, why do we need an override? A thriving, successful community needs a thriving, successful public school district. I think that's just pretty obvious. I mean, when people think about buying a house in Maricopa, if they have kids, the first question they ask the realtor is, what are the schools like? And it is crucial, I think, to the success of our community to have a thriving and successful public school district. It's important to have a little background and kind of paint the picture of how we got to where we are tonight with school funding in Maricopa Unified School District. And this is a slide that shows recent MUSD state funding reductions and comparing enrollment also, because our funding is based on student enrollment, and so that does impact the picture a little bit. So I just will run through these numbers with you. Back in 2008, 2009, that was when state budget cuts began, and not just in Arizona, but statewide. I was in the state of Washington, and that's when they began in the state of Washington as well, part of that national economic downturn. And so mid-year of the 2008-2009 school year, our district received a cut of $560,000. Even though we'd had a 13% enrollment increase that year, all of our staff were under contract at that point. Nevertheless, that cut was made mid-year. At that time, we had a M&O budget. That's our primary budget that we fund school operations out of $35.2 million, and the state was providing $4,733 per student to educate our students. Well, I'm not going to read every number on here, but you can see that in 2009-10, our cut was $2,347,000. That is in comparison to the baseline at the beginning of the 2008-9 school year. In other words, if Arizona had continued to fund schools at that same level, we would have received $2,347,000 more for the students that we had that year. And you can see on the far right-hand side, the funding per student from the state went down. Now, Arizona was not alone. It's the exact same thing happened in Washington State, but nonetheless, that's kind of the fiscal reality we've been facing. And so you can see how it's kind of progressed over the years. Kind of the worst year was 2011-12. We were $3 million below the 2008-9 baseline of what we would consider, you know, baseline funding. And as you can see, our M&O budget continued to go down as a result. This school year is in the bottom line. We're still being funded at $2,648,000 less than we were in comparison to the baseline year of 2008-2009. And we are staffing for approximately 5,811 students this year with an M&O budget of $29.4 million. The state's providing about $4,565 per student. So you can see what we're kind of up against. Our budget keeps decreasing. Our enrollment stays about the same. We have had a slight decrease in the last few years, but nonetheless, we've had major funding cuts over the last 5 years. There are basically 5 different term options that we have in the state of Arizona. A 1 year with no phase out. I mean, when you pass a 7-year, you get actually 5 years of full funding, and then the last 2 years are a phase out. You lose a third of the funding each year if it's not renewed. Well, with a 1 year or a 2 year, there is no phase out. So at the end of the first year on a 1 year, or at the end of the second year on a 2 year, that's it. If it's not renewed, then it goes to 0 in year number 3 on a 2-year proposal. The 5-year does have the 2-year phase out. The 5, 6, and 7 does have a 2-year phase out. So the 5-year is actually 3 years of full funding, and then years 4 and 5, you would lose 1/3 each year. So here are some estimates of what this could look like depending on the percentage that we chose. So as I talked to the advisory committee, you know, we looked at the term, we looked at the percentage we should ask for, we looked at what it should fund. So these are the estimates, and obviously we can ask for anywhere from a 1% override to a 15% override, 15% of our M&O budget. That's the range we can choose from. And so we looked at the different options, and you can see on the left the tax rate per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So let's take that as an example. We've been talking a lot about 5%, and so for a tax rate that would be 57.7 cents per 1,000. And what that means is if you have a $100,000 home, it would cost you $57.70 a year to pay for a 5% override. Obviously, if your home was worth $200,000, it would be twice that, but it gives you an idea of how to calculate it. And then you can see the revenue that a 5% override would raise would be $1.35 million for our school district each year that it was approved for. Override purposes, pretty general. I think this is wording comes straight from the law. For classroom supplies, academic programs, utilities, salaries, and benefits. Kind of open-ended, basically the things you pay for with your M&O budget, the budget that we use to operate our program. So, as I talked to the 30 different people over that series of 3 nights, we ended up in 3 broad categories of things that we thought would be good things to include in an override proposal. And we were very much aware of the fact that we need to be specific. That was really our goal. Let's come up with specific items that we can invest in, that we think will improve our school district, address our needs, help us do a better job with our students so that we can help our students achieve at higher level. And so in this area that we called improving educational programs, we talked a little bit about elementary art specialists. We know that at least one of the charters has elementary art. We do not offer it at this time. We have 4 elementary music teachers. We're thinking we can cover all 6 elementaries with 4 elementary art specialists. That might be something to consider. It would allow some more planning time for elementary teachers, which is an important issue for elementary teachers. Teachers do need planning time. And that's one of those job satisfaction things that I think would help us to retain elementary teachers if we could provide slightly more planning time than what we currently have. That's something we at least need to consider. Another thing we talked about in this category was class size reduction. We know that we have some large class sizes. And we just thought about 9 teachers would be maybe a good number to start with. And that would cost us $50,000 a teacher for salary and benefits, so $450,000. So those were some of the options we looked at in that area. Next category we talked about quite a bit was instructional technology. And I've found that Arizona is very much like Washington. The state doesn't really fund a lot of instructional technology, and it's difficult to keep up. But that is a basic tool that students need in schools now. Just like in every workplace, almost every workplace, computers are a basic tool of how adults get work done. And this is very much true in schools as well, from elementary all the way through high school. And it requires continuing investment. And I think, from what I can tell, that our district has done a good job of not trying to be cutting edge, because that can be expensive, you know. But I think that we're doing a good job of trying to provide basic instructional technology tools, computer workstations, and other tools for our students so that they can learn the skills they need to be successful students and important life skills as they continue to move up into life after high school. So anyway, some of the things we talked about. We have a need for some laptops on carts. And in retrospect, I did list Santa Rosa and Pima Butte there. Those are 2 schools in particular that could use some additional computers. In total honesty, we did not have a lot of time to research every way we would spend these funds. But nonetheless, I think laptops on carts are a tried and true way of getting technology into schools, and if we could buy about 2 carts, I guarantee we would put those in the best possible place. That was at least the gist of our discussion. Replace computer workstations. As you know, our computers get used a lot by students, and so there's that need to replace computers. Rarely do we throw out computers. I'm sure you realize that in public schools we tend to pass things down, and a lot of times high school equipment will get sent to the middle school equipment will get sent to the elementary, and if we could afford it, you know, we'd buy everybody new stuff, but that's just not the way it works because, you know, they get more use at the high school, et cetera. But they still have some life in them, and we can recycle those computer workstations, and that's an expensive thing to keep up with, and we could replace some computer workstations, and that would be a good investment for us. Number 3 would be to expand blended learning. That's a new program we're starting this year, and we really are looking at this as our pilot year. We're expecting great success out of that program. Students will be spending part of their day with real teachers and part of their day with instructional technology online, and we think this is a growth program for the future. And more of the coursework that our students will be doing over time will be done online. And it's just a fact, really. In fact, it's projected by researchers that within 6-8 years, about half of high school credits will be online. And it will be the enrichment classes, the advanced classes, it'll be some of the remedial classes. We'll always teach the core in our high schools, but we'll be doing more and more online. And I'm sure you're aware of that. I mean, colleges are into this in a big way, high schools more so all the time. So we would like to expand blended learning. We think that we're going to have a good pilot, and this would give us some resources to do that. And then wireless at all schools. To build out wireless to all of our schools would cost about $520,000 to do that. I was surprised, considering our new facilities, that we don't have wireless in all of our schools. It's really become almost standard in schools around the nation, and I was surprised at that. There's also the advantage that, as crazy as it sounds, because I've been around a long time, I remember when we had one computer in the whole school, but as crazy as it sounds, we're headed towards a time when we're going to have bring your own technology, at least at the high school. I mean, not that it's going to be required, but we know that so many students have powerful cell phones in their pocket that can actually be, good resources, good learning tools for them for research and class assignments and this kind of thing, and wireless can help facilitate that. A lot of issues that we'll have to continue to work on there, but that's just an example of the capability that wireless brings. So, it'd be easy to spend $935,000 total on that. One nice thing about instructional technology, for the most part, it's one-time investment. And so we could spend $467,000 a year, for example, on a 2-year project and get this stuff done. As we expand blended learning, though, that's probably going to include some teaching positions, and so that would be an ongoing expense. But nevertheless, you get the idea. Okay, the third area that we talked about was salary improvements. And as you can tell by the comments tonight, this was a controversial area. But we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that we have 85 new teachers in the district. And that's a lot of new teachers. Almost a third of our teaching staff, and it's difficult when you lose that many teachers each year. There's always going to be some turnover in a district this size, but we know that one reason that our teachers are leaving, one reason is because of the commute. So many of our staff live up in the valley, and so that does make sense. As gas prices go up, that's going to be a reality, and there's probably not a whole lot we can do about that. The other issue, though, is that we have not funded experience increments on the salary schedule. Now, if our staff have gone back to college and gotten a master's or other credits, we have given them a salary bump that way, but it's a very traditional teacher salary schedule. That's how teachers are rewarded as far as compensation is concerned, and they will get an experience increment on the salary schedule for each year of experience. But that salary schedule has been frozen for 5 years. So it almost becomes a common sense thing. Our teachers, especially new teachers, low on the salary schedule, can go to Chandler and get an immediate 5-step bump on their salary because they get recognition in the next district that is funding all their increments in their salary schedule. So we know that's a big deal, and we know that that's one reason why we've lost a lot of teachers. The other thing that we talked about was a 2% COLA for the remaining staff. And I believe very strongly that every single one of our staff members are highly valued. And I highly value every teacher in this district. They are doing the frontline work. And the most important work is done in the classroom. But they cannot get that job done unless they have excellent administrators backing them up and unless they have excellent classified people backing them up. And our classified staff and our administrators have had their pay totally frozen for the last 5 years. Because our salary schedules for classified staff and administrators don't have an education step, and it's strictly based on longevity, experience, and if there's other funds for a cost of living adjustment. But nonetheless, they have been without a raise for the past 5 years, and I believe very strongly that that is important to recognize that compensation issue for all staff. The 21 years I've been superintendent in the state of Washington, most years in the state of Washington we've received sufficient increase in funding from the state legislature that we were able to pass along a cost of living adjustment to our staff. And every time we had the ability to do that, I recommended to the board that we do the 1% for the entire staff, classified, certificated, administrators, because I think it's important to let the employees know that we value their service. And this can become a tricky issue. I, at the same time, have very high expectations for staff. And if there are performance issues, you know, I believe in addressing those. And it's not like we're writing blank checks to people and don't expect them to perform. I have very high expectations. I expect principals to have very high expectations in this area, and I think we do, from what I understand. And we will continue that tradition. Okay, I'm preaching a little bit. I'll try not to do that. Keep rolling. Another thing that I did was I sent an email to all staff, and I said, hey, I've got a big decision to make. I'm new. I don't really know. I'm not sure if these 30 people I've been talking to are really telling me the whole straight story. You know, it's a relatively small group. So what do you think, you know, as staff members? And I sent it to all. We have about 500 to 600 email addresses in the district, so I sent it to all staff, certificated and classified. I said, what should I recommend to the governing board concerning an override on the November 2012 ballot? And I gave them a little hint that the committee was thinking in terms of a 2-year proposal for about 5%. And got back about 86 responses, and is about an 84% yes. And the 16%, the 14 people that said no, it wasn't all like, no, just don't do it. I mean, there were certainly some of those who just said, no, I don't think we should do it. Several of them just said, I don't think it's time. I think we need to wait a year or something like that. So it was interesting to get those responses, and I appreciated that. So this is the formal recommendation from my advisory committee, and I really appreciated them taking the time to meet with me. And we were just pretty much totally unanimous on the 5%. There really wasn't much controversy. Let me rephrase that. There were some of us that thought we should ask for more, definitely. But we actually came, I think, around 5% as a group pretty quickly, with the idea that we need to take forward a modest proposal. I mean, the idea is that the economy is still tough in Maricopa and the state of Arizona. We know that we have about 8.2% unemployment rate in the state. We know that some people have lost jobs. We know some people have taken a lesser job or are working 2 jobs to make ends meet. And we do have to recognize that. This is a time when our state, our community, our nation is tightening its belt a little bit. And I think this is a way for us to recognize that with a 5%. The committee also recommends a 2-year term. So remember, if the override is not renewed in year 2, the override funding is reduced to 0 in year 3. So it just stops at the end of year 2. So the idea is that we would go back in 2 years. The idea is that we would have had a chance to prove, hey, we've done a really good job with the funds you gave us 2 years ago, and so we're back with a new proposal. Who knows what that will actually be, what that would look like, but we would come back. So then we were very specific on the things that the committee recommended. We talked about a lot of stuff. I kind of just went through those slides, right? But we had to get down to make sure that it didn't go over $1.35 million. And so we came up with this, and as the committee knows, I did have to make the budget balance a little bit. We didn't stay till midnight to make sure that we balanced it as a group. I volunteered to do that myself. But I think I came very, very close to where we ended up with in our last discussion. So number 1, addition of 4 elementary art specialists, $200,000. As I said, we know that one of the charter schools has those art specialists. That could be a good thing, allow us to be competitive, et cetera. Number 2, addition of 9 teachers for the purpose of class size reduction, $450,000. Number 3, expansion of the blended learning program, $250,000. I talked about that. Number 4, expansion of the wireless network to all schools. And then number 5, recruitment, retention, longevity, salary schedule adjustment for teachers. That'd be one way to say it. Or funding of 1 year of experience on the teacher salary schedule. It will cost $300,000 to do that. In other words, to give everybody 1 year of experience on that teacher salary schedule. We're not going to be able to make up all 5 years, but we can restart the increments, the steps on the salary schedule for $300,000. That is the committee recommendation. It's not totally unanimous, but I think it represents the consensus of the group and really kind of where we ended up. We certainly listened to viewpoints on, people that were more cautious or less cautious, but just to make it clear, the committee as a group said move forward on the November 12 ballot. We did have one strong voice that felt we should wait a year, and even though he's a very strong supporter of an override, he just feels like we should wait a year. We certainly listened to that, but I think this represents the best thinking of the group. So, if I had to make a recommendation to you, it would be very similar to what I just read to you, but I would tweak it just a little bit. And I would recommend a 5%, 5-year term. So remember, that's 3 years of full funding, and then does have a 2-year phase out. That means that we would come back to the voters in 3 years instead of 2. And I think that would be an advantage. Prevent that election burnout. I think it presents a stable picture for 3 years at a modest level, which I think has some appeal to people. But the main reason I make this recommendation is because in the state of Washington, during my tenure as superintendent, for a long time, the most you could run a levy for, an override for, was 2 years. Well, state law was changed, and you could run an override for 3 or 4 years. And almost every district in the state went to either a 3-year or a 4-year, and it had zero impact on passage rate. It was still all about what percentage are you asking for, what is the rate per thousand, what is the tax rate, and what are you purchasing. That was the real key in my past experience. So that's the reason I make that recommendation. Okay, so looking at the list, I wordsmith this just a little bit. Number one, I would call for the addition of 4 elementary enrichment teachers. And we didn't get a lot of time to refine this in our discussions, but thinking that through, I would prefer it to be a little bit more open-ended. We may end up with the need for art specialists. We may, though, decide we would rather have technology specialists, or maybe we would like to do something for our talented and gifted students. I'm not exactly sure where we would end up, but we'd definitely refine that quickly. But I think for tonight, having to bring you a recommendation, I would rather phrase it that way. That would give us that extra planning time at the elementary level and that kind of thing. Number 2, addition of 9 teachers for the purpose of class size reduction. Same as the committee. Number 3, expansion of blended learning programs, same as the committee. Number 4, expansion of wireless network to all schools, the same. Number 5 and 6 are slightly different. I would split the money between teaching staff and between classified and administration. And I already explained why. I think that our classified staff administrators are highly valued in this district, as are our teachers, and their pay has been frozen for the last 5 years. We have lost excellent administrators this year, not entirely because of salary, but partially because of salary. And so I would put $150,000 towards the restarting the teacher salary schedule. It wouldn't totally restore 1 year of experience, but it would get us started in the right direction. And then I would also do a cost of living adjustment for classified staff of 1.7% and administrators of 0.5%, and that would cost us $150,000 to do that. That would be my primary recommendation that I would make. That brings me to Plan B. You always have to have a Plan B. And I do think that another way to look at this would be this. Same percentage, 5%, same number of years, 5-year term I would recommend. And then really items 1 through 5 are from the previous slide. I have dropped off, however, salary improvements. I know that is the controversial part. I do not recommend this option, but I bring it to you as a fallback plan that you might want to consider. I reallocated the funds, so that it still totals $1.35 million. Added 14 teachers for the purpose of class size reduction, raised that from 9 to 14. Added $50,000 to blended learning, and then I did add $100,000 to instructional technology. We know that this is an area that we're going to continue to need to invest in. So I recommend that as a fallback plan. My primary recommendation would be the previous slide, but I also want to say that I do think there's room to disagree on this. And I am new. I recognize that. And I've been trying to listen and come up with a proposal for the governing board to look at to make a good decision on. And my feelings will not be hurt if you, for example, go with the committee's recommendation, because they are a good committee and they know what they're talking about. I just felt that I needed to give you my best recommendation, what I think would work, but I do recognize that I'm new to the community. And, along those same lines, I recognize there's room to disagree on this. If the board feels that we need to wait a year, then I'm willing to do that. I just know that, having been a superintendent for 21 years, I've never been in a district that was without an override. And I know that those funds are necessary for us to do the best job we can do with kids. And so that's why I wanted to bring this to the attention of the governing board and ask for a decision, and then we'll implement that decision, whatever it is. Thank you.
Thank you. awful lot of work for 3 weeks. Great job. And thanks to the committee for all their help in making that happen. Who wants to get us started?
Go ahead. You always let
Mrs.
us go
Anderson?
first. You go first.
No.
Okay, I'll go. If I can do it without crying. I know what the community has overwhelmingly said in the past because I was part of the committee last year to try to get the override passed. So I've heard it all, but I also believe in our teachers and our students. I don't know what the best answer is. I know that it's hard to ask for help. You kind of have to swallow your pride a little bit, and I feel like I have to be like that toddler that keeps saying, "Mom, Mom, Mom, Mom," until finally she answers. I also have trust in Dr. Chestnut. So, I want to recommend following the committee's recommendation. This is just I'm listening to the community, listening to everybody that has emailed me and called me, and you can continue to do that because we need input. We're here to represent you. My only concern with the option 1 that I've heard overwhelmingly is they don't want it specified for elementary art specialists, that wording it as 13 teachers for the purpose of class size reduction, or enrichment teachers, but some other wording besides specifying one category over another, because one is not any more important than another. It's all important. And with that, the rest of the committee's recommendation, with number 5, the recruitment, retention, and funding for 1 year of experience for our teachers. Simple. Our teachers, we need to be able to reward those teachers who have stayed with us and have continued to fight for our students. And I completely believe in that. That's I don't know if that's a recommendation. I don't know if that opens up a can of worms. But that's right now what I have to say.
Thank you.
Without crying more.
Mrs. Coutray?
Last weekend, I was at the ASBA conference in Flagstaff, and one of the presenters called it Common Core Boot Camp, and it truly was. There's a lot of stuff coming down the pike that I don't see any district in this state that will not have an override. Our technology is not there. It needs to be there. Our entire math curriculum is going to change, and we're going to need those teachers to stay with us and invest in those teachers so that they can do best by our students. And this community needs to get behind our students, our teachers, and this district. We are a huge part of this community, and we're not going anywhere. And so we need the folks to get behind us. I like option 1. With Mrs. Anderson's, I do agree with her take on the art specialists, enrichment specialists. I think would go over a lot better. I like the specificity of it because people will know exactly what we're going to be doing with those funds. So I would recommend that we do go forward with an override. I can't see how we cannot. We have been behind the 8 ball with the growth of this district from the inception of this city, and we need to be more proactive instead of reactive. We've got to put some feet forward and get ahead of the game instead of being behind it. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Ms. Burnett?
I, for one, am also for the advisory committee's recommendation. I do agree that we do need to reduce the class sizes. That was one of my biggest issues, well as overcrowded classrooms, the technology. I can't even get my computer to work right now. I don't know if it's a technology thing or what it is, but I haven't been able to see anything. I've been looking over at Patty's. But yes, we've always been trying to catch up for many, many years, and the teachers. I agree, Tori, with your not specifically picking on one particular professional, but maybe opening it up to just the professionals that need to be in those classrooms. I agree, that's a good idea. We've got such brilliant teachers. I was in one of the override meetings on, I believe it was Thursday night, and there was one teacher sitting in there, and she was talking about how she only had one computer, and that she had, she had created this entire social networking world in her classroom, tweeting and Facebook and text messaging, and she's got all these cute little cell phones, and all these kids have their own little phone numbers. And my point is, these teachers are brilliant. The creativity that these people have to go into a classroom and teach with absolutely they're limited with their technology, they're limited with tools, and the things that they can think up is just amazing. I can only imagine what they could do if they had all of the tools and the technology and to move forward and really bring this district up. So I am in favor of the advisory committee recommendation, also along with Tori's recommendation of the 13 teachers.
Mr. Irving.
We have a lot of comments. I guess, obviously, I'm in for it. One of the things I really see missing in this, and Mr. Conrad hit upon it, when he said, give us the tools and we'll prove it. You've got to tell me, if I invest my money, what is my payback? We've got to step out and say, if I do 1, 2, or 3, I'm going to see this, this, and this. We've got to step out there and say that. I think the other thing is, when I look up and down, same concept. What is our class size? Because somebody's saying it's high, I don't know that. The last time I looked, our class size wasn't that enormous compared to other districts. If it's an issue that school A has 35, then let's look at it not as across the board, okay? So I would very much like us to pinpoint these down even a little further. Let's say I need this and that and whatever. When I look at whether you call art specialists or this or that, again, how is that going to improve test scores or whatever measurement you come up with? So I think what I would like to see is to step out, go out on a limb, tell them, like Nathan said, if you give us 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, here's what it'll get you for your bang for your buck, okay? Be that in the training, be that in whatever, this is what we're going to give you for that. Because again, we can get emotional about it, but I think when people want to know, where am I going to be when this is done? How are my kids going to be there? Am I going to get my kid's bus somewhere? That's what people want to know, okay? The other thing is, I get very concerned, because I'm clearly for option 2, is that I support a teacher, been a teacher, but teachers need principals. Teachers need people driving those kids to school. Teachers need people keeping the grounds clean. Teachers need people to feed those kids. Teachers need a curriculum committee. Teachers need people in HR. How in the world can we sit there and simply say they're going to do that as an isolate? I cannot believe a teacher in this room would stand up and say, I don't need an assistant principal, or I don't need that. I can do it all by myself. I mean, come on. If it's going to be a team, it's a team. And I would like to meet the people who say, I don't need any of those support. I'm all my own in my classroom with my 30 kids and nothing else matters. Well, what a message to send to the rest of our staff. I mean, as an administrator, I'm going to say, I'm only going to regard the 5th graders. If we're going to do it, otherwise leave it out as far as I'm concerned. So my feeling is, if I invest any money, it's to our entire staff, because we are a district that's going to go forward with our HR people, with our curriculum people, with the people who run copies, with everything. We're all part of MUSD, not just the teachers. So I would clearly support, if we do any of that, it's got to be an option where everybody who works in this district is taken care of, and we know we care about them just as much as a 3rd grade teacher. Sorry about my soapbox, but I feel very strongly about we're all a team here. We either are or we aren't.
Thank you, Mr. Irving. We have two big issues to tackle and decisions to make. The first one, of course, is whether or not we approve the money, the time, the energy, and the reputation to put this on the ballot in November. It's pretty clear where everybody's direction is. I think that our focus is still based on our need versus our ability to win an election. And we have to be mindful of the latter, because the voters, by and large, don't care about our need as much as what's in it for them, right? So we have to be thinking along those lines, in my opinion. We have, I think Dr. Chestnut, in very short order, and his committee have done a really great job of developing some potential plans. Very excited to see all the support from the people. It definitely, just through that and through the call of the public and the emails and so forth, seems like we have some momentum we didn't have a year ago in support. I'm concerned about the amount of time that we have to see this through to the finish line and to be able to educate the public, as has been clear that we need to do. I'm also concerned about the fact that that this is going to be on the November ballot with the presidential campaign, and of course all the national as well as the state candidates. I can't imagine very many people going to the polls in November looking forward to voting for more taxes, right? So I don't know how that plays out as far as the voter turnout and the sentiment of those voters. I don't know the answer to that. I'm nervous about the impact of, if we do fail in November, of our ability to pass this next year or in subsequent years when the political and economic climate may be much more favorable for passing such an override. So those are just some devil's advocate thoughts and hopes that you guys will think about. All that said, as concerned as I am about our ability to win this election, and I'm of the belief that we'd be better served to spend the next year preparing for 2013, I'm going to err on the side of A, supporting our superintendent and his recommendations, and B, giving the people, giving the voters the opportunity to make that decision. So with that, to address the plans themselves, a couple concerns I have relative to the committee recommendation. One is the term. I think the 2-year term is too short. It is, in effect, assuming we're successful, we're in effect receiving a grant, and yet some of the bulk of the funds that we're using this for are foundational and permanent uses, like additional positions and raises and so forth. So we would be putting ourselves in a position where all the good that we did in those arenas, we'd have to undo. And I question whether or not 2 years is enough time, not for us to have a direct impact in the classroom and with our students and teachers, but if there's one thing I've learned in this role, is that this bureaucracy is in this organization is very much the cruise liner and not a kayak, right? So for us to say, okay, this will be a 2-year venture, and then we're going to have enough data and changes, fundamental changes, to go to the voters, and it'll be a slam dunk, we'll renew it in perpetuity, I think is high risk, to say the least. The raises, we've talked ad nauseum about how much we need to improve our pay for our people. My concern there is, again, separating our need from what the voters want to hear. And a couple of folks very eloquently stated the against argument there, as far as the economy is impacting the voters. There are a lot of folks who haven't had raises, who have lost their jobs, and so on and so forth. So I question whether or not including that into our proposal is going to help us get it passed. And I think at the end of the day, we have to do everything that we can control, we have to control to make this thing be victorious. And then less critical in my view, but worth mentioning is I do think it's a good idea to specify that we were going to use 4 of those positions for art education in addition to in lieu of lumping them all together as just additional staff. I think ultimately I hope we're going to rely on our superintendent and our administrators to make those decisions on where those funds are best used. They've done that. I don't know that it would change. I think it would help speak to some voters and not hurt us by just having a generic quantity of teacher positions. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I guess I would like a...
Wait, I have another question. Do you have a question?
No, I want to ask a procedural question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess in lieu of some of the things you say, how would you like to proceed? Should we separate some of this, or... Because there are a lot of things it's hard for me to go lump into. I'm asking a procedural question. Could we just separate it by motion? How do you want to do that?
It being, I guess my recommendation would be let's have some more conversation and see if there's some consensus or somebody wants to make a motion, we can do that. Anybody can make a motion if you want to if you want to amend the recommendations that are provided. I think there are 3 of them. We can amend those or do something totally different if it's our pleasure.
Well, okay, for instance, like I would like to start by just simply us agreeing on the 5%, 2 versus 5. I mean, just, does that make sense? So
yeah, deciding what we do agree on.
Yeah, exactly. So if we say then at least we're saying we agree to go forward. We're agreed to go forward for 5%. If we could just start with that part, then because the nitty gritty is going to be the other stuff. Would you guys?
Yeah. Can I ask a lead-in question for that though? Dr. Chestnut, I know when we discussed this 2 weeks ago, my biggest comment was, I need to hear from the community before we can make this decision. I think clearly we've heard from quite a few community members. I don't know if the word's gotten out enough. Unfortunately, we're on such a short time frame to really grasp everybody's opinion. But I do think those that have gotten involved, and it's definitely helped the decision. The next comment or question is, from that community support, what I want to know is, do we have an override chairperson who has said, yes, I'm going to chair this adventure? Because without that, tomorrow morning is a whole different story. Because being in that role, it's a huge undertaking, and knowing that there's only August and September. So my concern is, along with everybody's kind of taking what everybody said, do we have a committee chair? Because the board cannot take that role on.
Right, neither can staff.
Right.
Well, I suppose technically staff could as long as it's outside of school time, but I think it would obviously be much better if it was a parent or community member that did that. So the committee recognized that issue very much and understood that, we need a strong promotional committee. So I don't have a name to give you of one person, but when we raised that question in our meeting, the question was, we need at least 4 people that would step up in leadership roles, and how many people would be willing to do that? And we had about 6 or 7 or 8 hands went up for that. So I think that there's a pool there that can come together and lead that committee, is my impression.
So they're committed to the charge. I mean, I know Leanne and Nancy and Clint, that's my concern, is
they said that
whether we vote yes or no, there needs to be somebody who's going to be the champion and the chair and say, yes, let's go team. And that's what I want to see as part of making that decision.
Sure.
So you're confident that we have that commitment?
I am.
Well, I know, I'm putting you on the spot, sorry.
Well, then I would like to make a motion. I move that we approve the 5% 5-year term as recommended by the superintendent. That's the extent of my motion right now.
There's a motion on the floor to approve an override on the ballot for a 5-year term at a 5% rate. Is that
That's
correct?
my motion.
Details to follow.
Details to follow.
Is there a second? I will second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails.
I have a question. In speaking about I've heard from the community as well, we've all heard from the community about this 5% 2 years. I'm hearing from most of the committee that it's like, okay, let's do this for a short amount of time. We're going to show everybody that we really mean business and that we're going to prove to the community that we're going to be transparent and we're going to make sure that the entire public knows exactly where this funding is going, but they're going to see the improvement in the schools. Is 2 years long enough?
No.
And my question would be to Dr. Chestnut. I mean, you know, we're speaking as a community, but I'm not an education expert, so I'm asking that question to you.
Well, the goal is to make progress in 1 year. We could make a better case with a 3-year term, but we can make progress in 2 years. We can prove it better over 3 years. That would give us more, not only more time, but more data. So the best answer to that question is 3 years, but nonetheless, our goal is to improve annually, and I do believe that we will be able to show improvement in 2 years as well. We could show more in 3.
You know, also, I think something to keep in mind, one is, this is, the 5-year plan is really 4 years of payments spread over 5 years.
Right.
And also that hopefully, when we do this again, we're not going to be starting this process 2 months before ballots go out. So hopefully it's a year before ballots go out. So think about that in terms of the story we'll have to tell at that juncture of the process.
I think in a year we'll have something to tell. I would like to make a motion that it's the 5% for 2 years limited.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have discussion. Again, I go back to the time frame. Dr. Chestnut, could you explain, or somebody explain, the whole time frame for collecting data over a period of time? I think the thing I have a problem with this is that basically, you know, we have to show average yearly progress anyway. My concern is if this is funded, we pick a time to start the baseline to collect data, which I think should not be that November if it passes. In other words, we give ourselves a year to gear up to collect the data. So we're really looking at a 2-year period with everything in place, training done to get a good, solid, look. I think you or Amber can talk about research. I mean, there's a time frame to do research, and it's not modeled in that short a period of time. I guess my concern is it's valid data. Does that make?
It does, yeah. It would be more valid after 3 years.
Yeah, and that's my concern.
My concern is what's going to show on the ballot is 5 years. 5 years has not passed. And I'm going from being a part of the chair committee last year that overwhelmingly the biggest thing was the time frame, because economy is very hard. People still have a hard time. But if they see the window and they know exactly where they're going, I think that we've got a fantastic chance with limiting it to 2 years, a very modest 5%, and then in a year we come back and we can say, look what we've done. And I know that our test scores and our staff will be so much higher above even in the year. And then you've got a year to get ready for the and then it would just be a renewal. It won't be a whole new override. So
that's assuming that we get the immediate results that.
Right.
Right, and so it's a high.
You know what? I think I think we will.
Okay. I would support that if somebody's willing to stand up and give me a measurement of what that means.
A measurement
we
of what?
don't lose a
In
third
other
of our
words,
staff.
You said.
We won't lose a third of our staff next.
I'm
after
not
that.
convinced that's even valid. I won't get into it.
Well,
All I'm saying is if we can say that in 2 years, we will go from point A to point B. I have no problem with that. If somebody can assure me that within that time frame, we will be able to show significant growth on whatever measurement you choose, I have no problem. But until I hear that, then it's just, we're going to do better. I have no idea what that means.
There's two situations here. You've got a public who's been dealing with, as you said, President Bartle, this recession, and there's some people that don't have jobs, and they're sending their children to school, and I'm sure that they want the best for their students and their kids, that the teachers want the best for their students, the parents want the best for their kids, but they're out of work. So it's almost a matter of we have to prove to the public first. And we do need that data, and it is very important, and I do agree. I think having more time to gather that data, but the public doesn't really have that kind of time. So maybe if we could just move forward with the 2 years, get what we can out of this data. We've got brilliant people working at MUSD, wonderful people here. We have a very highly technological world here. Maybe we can work together somehow and get that as accurate a data as possible within the 2 years to prove to the public we're moving forward. We are making strides in this short amount of time. That might be convincing to the public, because we need their support. It's the public support we need.
And if I might add, it's not just the time to get data, but the more time you have, there's a residual benefit on better results you're going to get, right?
Totally.
And just for clarification, I think that, if I'm not mistaken, our previous override attempts were for 7 years.
Correct.
So
Well,
this is,
it was 5 years with a 2-year phase out, but it was listed as 5 years on the override pamphlet.
so then this one we listed for 3 years?
This one would be listed as 5 years on the you're talking about the Dr. Chestnut's recommendation?
I'm wondering why, if the last one was 5 plus a 2-year phase out, why this one wouldn't in
Be
effect
three
be a
then.
3 plus a 2-year phase out?
By what you just said.
I'm just going on what we, as far as legally last year. When you pass a 5-year override, there's a 2-year phase out.
Mr.
So,
Beckett has
Mr. Beckett, who's coming up? I think there's 2 different options.
We have with us tonight Jim Kyle from our monitoring, and I'm sure he'll be able to answer that question much more effectively. Thank you.
We won't want you to drive all this way for nothing.
Absolutely. The question I think that was asked was last time, what was the length of the override that was proposed? And it was a 7-year override, so 5 years at 100% plus the 2 years of phase out. On the ballot, we describe it as a 7-year override.
Right.
We further describe it as 5 years with 2 years of phase down, because that's what we're required to. We say it multiple times in the pamphlet as well. So I think the voters were aware that it was sort of a mixed bag, so to speak. It was 5 years plus an additional 2 years. In this case, if we go with the superintendent's recommendation, it would be described the same way. It would be described as a 5-year with a 2-year phase down. So 3 years at the full 100% and then 2 years of phase down.
Mm-hmm.
So the voters in both the ballot and the pamphlet would get the full story. As
So
to
it's
how.
5-year with the 2-year phase out.
Right.
It's a 5-year override in total, 3 years full, and then a 2-year
2 years
phase
of
down.
phase out.
And so the way the statute's written, the way the statute requires us to present it, it's to present all that information in the ballot and in the rest of the pamphlet. So I don't think there would be confusion. I think voters would understand that it's 3 years plus an additional 2 years. In the case of a 2-year override, it would just be obviously 2 years with no phase down at all.
Thank you. And ultimately, we're all, the goal is to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we're losing votes, right? We want to make sure that we're maximizing our ability to get the thing passed, if I'm hearing everybody correctly. So one of the things that, and I'm thinking about, obviously there's some long-term implications. This is not just what can we do for MUSD over the next 2 years? Because we have to think about 20 years,
Right.
not just 2 years. So what position we put ourselves in 2 years from now if we just did this as a 2-year, and we'll put ourselves in a pretty precarious position. Dr. Chestnut said the empirical evidence he has is that there's no difference in the voters as far as whether they would vote for, in Washington's case, a 2-year, 3-year, or 4-year. So I don't want us to create an issue for the voters. I'm not convinced that the voters are going to look at everything that we've done, look at our plan, how we're going to spend the money, look at it's only 5% versus 15% that we tried last year, and it's only going to be 5 years versus the 7 years we tried last year, I don't think they're going to be saying, oh, if it was 2 years instead of 5 years, I'd vote for you, but I'm not going to. I don't think it's a deterrent.
But that's
Okay, I disagree, but
that's what we're hearing. They're saying we want it to be shorter. We want you to prove to us what you can do.
Yeah.
That's what I've been hearing overwhelmingly from the public, even in our, you know, it's.
Again, I'll just reiterate my 2 points. One is it's super, there's a risk reward for us, right?
Absolutely.
It's really high
Absolutely.
risk, it's only do 2 years, and from a long-term getting renewals. But there's also the impact of what we do with the funds. When we're talking about hiring 14 teachers, talking about possibly giving raises, and having all that go away in 2 years, that's a difficult position for us to be in.
Yeah,
I don't think it will go away.
Right,
you
but we
do
can't-
realize if we
this
do
isn't-
2 years, we've got to come back again in 2 years. We all accept that, right?
Yeah, you
But
start in a
that's
year.
What the public has been basically
If we
telling
come
us.
back in 2
and
years,
tell
are we
us.
saying we're going to come back for 2
They're
years
saying-
for just 2 years again?
No, then you can come back.
Maybe
and
they'll
you
be
can
like,
change
well,
it.
yeah, maybe we can go to 5 years or 7 years now. You've proven to us. We get it now. We're seeing the
And again,
the
I
fruit of
asked
the
the
work.
question over, go, tell me what prove means. So, you know, whether it's 2 years come up, what are you going to tell them? and show them?
I hear you, I know.
Okay, that's-
I know, and
as long
I
as I
understand that
understand that, I'm
data
okay
is
with it.
always best when it's been able to collect over a long time. You can measure things better, that whole bit. But we don't really have that on our side in this case, you know.
Well, we can
you
tell
know,
them, if you want to say, it, I have no problem, that we're going to use test scores in a year to show we've improved. I have no problem with that.
I think
Is that
part
what
of it
you're
is we
saying?
retain our teachers.
I think
If
that's
we
a
can
huge-
retain
that
our
would help a
teachers,
lot.
that's the largest.
So the measurement
That
of our
will
school
prove.
improvement is we retain our teachers, even if our scores don't go up.
It's not, you're looking, you've got to simplify it.
That's what
We're
I'm trying
looking
to
at,
do.
we've lost 75 teachers, and in talking to the committee and in talking to the community, because believe me, I've been out there all over the place in the last 2 weeks, overwhelmingly, they want it limited. They want to see that we're going to put the money where we say we're going to put it, that our teachers stay here, and then you know what? You come back in a year, 2 years, then you know what? Maybe we'll pass it. There's a better percentage we'll pass a 5-year.
The data shows us our grades have gone up with those teachers gone. Our elementary school grades are going up. Our scores are going up.
Hopefully they will.
Well, how come that's not being displayed out there to the public to see all this stuff?
They get the
we need-
reports all
you know,
the time. We get them. I mean, our K through 3 especially, our scores have continued to go up.
That's another thing is, I don't, maybe we don't communicate very well what it exactly is that we, you know, even with the schools, that this, all of the stuff that's going on, this override and all of that. Of course, we were talking about making sure that we communicate with the public and let them know specifically what we're going to be doing and where the money's going to be going and that kind of thing. And there is this, I'm going to call it a perception as well, that MUSD has this really bad reputation. And but then I look at graduations and children graduating with honors and all kinds of things, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really impressive. And I don't know which one it was in the public that was asking about doing the researching the facts. Maybe it was Mr. Reeves that stated it, but that's something we all need to do, and that kind of information needs to be put out there, really positive information. But back to the data and the short amount of time, data you are able to collect data in a short amount of time, correct,
sure.
Mr. Chestnut?
Well, you know, this whole issue of metrics, I think, is a really good question for a school board to have. And how do you measure the success of the school district, whether you're having an override or not? And, you know, I think nationwide we've just relied too much on our state test scores or our, you know, our grade for the school that the state gives you or whatever it is. And those are important indicators. Those could be one of the indicators. But for a good system of metrics of how we're doing, you need a broader brush. You need more data points, and you need to have a system. And that would be one of the things that's on my to-do list to develop that. It takes a while to get something like that in place. It took us about a year to develop that in my previous district. We ended up with a pretty good, what we called a school report, our school district report card. So that would be the goal. And I think that it would include indicators of progress on things funded by the override. But because of the time frame, that we're just not ready to present that. But I could make a commitment that we will work on metrics so that we can, you know, prove to the public that their investment is being well spent, and I think that's a project that really cannot be figured out tonight, but nonetheless, it needs to be on our to-do list, and we need to get it done, within the next year.
So President Bartle, there was a motion on the floor of the 5% 2-year limited, and it was seconded. Can I call for a vote?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay. So call for a vote. Aye.
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 Nay.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries 3-2.
Thank you. Okay. Now,
All right, so we are going to have an override,
Yes.
and it's going to be at a 5% rate for 2 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
correct.
All right, so you want to talk about what we're doing with the money if our voting public is so kind as to give us the additional funding?
Is this something that has to be decided tonight that's going in part of the resolution? Or is this something that can be thought about, hashed out about?
All right, Chestnut, how specific in the language do we need to?
I would defer to Jim Gill, our attorney here. It's my understanding that we do not have to specify how the funds will be allocated. It would be a good project for us to do in a very short time frame.
Right.
But I would defer to Mr. Gill.
Thank you. That is correct. You don't have to specify in any real detail as to how the proposed override monies would be spent. What the statute requires in the pamphlet is that you give some indication as to how the funds will be spent in the first year. It doesn't really tell us how much detail, and different districts do it differently. Some provide a lot of detail, thinking that they need to do that to get the votes. Others are fairly general in their language. And so it's sort of the difference between saying, I forget the exact numbers, but 13 teachers versus 9 teachers for overcrowding to prevent overcrowding and 4 teachers for enrichment. So it's that sort of difference. And so you don't have to do that tonight. You have in the resolution directed district staff to prepare the pamphlet. Well, actually, my office prepares the pamphlet, and we work with district staff on filling in numbers and finalizing it. So you have done that in terms of adopting this election resolution. You have directed district staff to move forward with the pamphlet. We can always bring the pamphlet back to you for review. You can be included on the discussions. That's not a problem. But what I'm suggesting is we don't have to finalize any wording tonight, although we do have to do so in the pretty near future because you're fairly late in adopting this resolution.
Really?
Yeah, I know that's not news. But the county's deadline is August 17th, so just a couple weeks really to receive the pamphlet from the district. So there's not a lot of time.
I think we have August 8th was when we had to finalize some verbiage. Is that?
Well, we have a meeting on August 8th.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, speaking as just a person, community member, I trust that Dr. Chestnut and staff, now that they know what direction to go, that they will get together with the committee chair people, which I'm assuming is Nancy and Clint and Leanne and Jim and anybody else. But I trust that they will come together and finalize
The details.
where it needs to go.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all agree that we're in the right direction. Is that?
I agree.
So
What am I agreeing to?
That we're going in the right direction with the committee and with the.
Oh, yes,
Let
clearly.
the decide, the details.
There are some fundamental differences in terms of how we think the funds should be used.
Oh, big differences.
So, I'm happy to defer to Dr. Chestnut. I don't want to put all that pressure on you. If you want the feedback from the board, you already got some tonight. You can come back next week and refine it a little bit and get more feedback from us, if that's your pleasure and the pleasure of the board.
Yeah, I would prefer you make the decision, because you're going to have to deal with it one way or the other. If you'd like to do that, but
I'd be very comfortable moving forward.
then fine.
based
Then
on
I
tonight.
agree with Tori.
I think you've heard a lot,
You decide where
yeah.
all of it goes. And
And
follow
I
your
trust-
own,
I know,
follow your
yeah.
own recommendation.
Trust always.
Well, and the community that's come forward, thank you again. I think that you have shown a leadership that this school district needs and that our teachers and our students and our staff deserve. So thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Didn't I do that good?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
It's 7:45.